What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video where we're going to be breaking down the Season 24 meta tank and support guide, where we're going to be breaking down the best tanks and supports and telling you tips and tricks on not only how to play them, but how to counter them as well, so you have everything you need to dominate this competitive season and climb with ease. But the GameLeap website is the best way to ensure you climb with in-depth VOD review analysis over every single one of these characters. So if you want to see high-level players step by step and their decision making in their games, then go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now in this video, we're going to be covering actually 7 different heroes, with the supports being Ana, Lucio, and Mercy, and the tanks being Winston, Zarya, D.Va, and Hammond. I was only going to include 3 and 3, but D.Va and Hammond both had almost identical pick rates in GM, so that's what I based this list off of. And I don't really think it's fair to just include D.Va when Hammond is played almost exactly the same amount and is a very important character for you to understand how to play and how to counter in your game. So that's why I'm including 7 in this video. Now kicking it off with the first character on the list, we have Ana. And in this meta in particular, with monkeys and Hammonds and divas, positioning is absolutely everything on Ana. You need to be positioning differently depending on what type of compositions the enemy is running. Like if the enemy is running something like a Ryan Zarya, then you want to typically be positioned farther back so that you're not as susceptible to their front line. But if the enemy is running a dive, you want to be playing closer together to your team so that you're much harder to dive and you're not isolated as a threat. Understanding how to position against different types of DPS and different enemy tanks is going to be the best way that you survive and get the most impact on Ana this season. A big aspect of that is you got to make sure that enemies are using their abilities to close the gap in on you. You can't have a Genji get close to you before he uses his dash, because then he's going to have an extra bit of burst damage. You want him to have to use his dash to get to you in the first place. You don't want a monkey to make contact with you without him using his leap, because then he can have his leap to chase you once you get away. This is an incredibly important concept, but if any of these things happen, it has to do with a positioning failure. Now, as far as a targeted tip against Winstons in particular, it can be pretty hard to sleep a Winston sometimes, because sometimes they will bubble mid-air, sometimes they'll bubble when they land, they will jiggle in and out of their bubble, but if you miss a sleep dart, you're often going to die to the Winston. The best and most consistent way is actually when the monkey lands, you actually push your body into his body to where your hitboxes are overlapping. That ensures that you will 100% hit the sleep dart. And yes, it's scary because you're walking at the monkey, but as long as you survive at like 70 HP, if it's only a solo monkey jumping you, it doesn't matter when he's sleeping, then you're good to go. You can back away and you 100% hit that sleep dart. Now, against another diver like Hammond, for example, every time he slams you, it should be a comically easy sleep as long as you're ready for it. So just be ready to aim down and sleep the Hammond the second he slams you, and you should be able to sleep him 100% of the time. And that is one of the best ways to consistently kill Hammonds, is just by swarming him as an entire team after he's slept. Now, the best counter tip for going up against Ana is honestly overwhelming them. You need to be attacking her when either her teammates are low or she's low, because an Ana can be very overwhelmed when everyone's low. She's trying to do all these things, and that is when she's most vulnerable. Now, moving on to the next character on this list, the first tank on the list is none other than Winston. Now, just like what we told you not to have happen on Ana, on Winston, you want to close the gap on targets as much as possible before investing leap. If you can get up to a target before investing leap, and it's an Ashe and she coach guns you away, or a Lucio and he boops you away, you could then use your leap to follow up on them and chase them even more. So that's the first important thing that you need to understand. That also gives you flexibility to disengage if you need to, which is amazing. You also need to be talking to your Zarya so you can coordinate jumping in, getting bubbled, and then bubbling yourself. Doing this at the same time or not in the proper order can minimize the amount of impact you get out of each one. And then lastly, you need to be able to wiggle in and out of your bubble. This is a very important tool, especially when going up against targets like Reapers. If you master throwing down your bubble and jiggling in and out of one side, that can be the best way to survive and win a lot of duels and dodge precious cooldowns. As an additional tip I'll give you on Winston, and it's something that people don't do enough, go into the training room, get unlimited ultimate, and practice primal rage mechanics. Just a little bit of effort in this category is going to make you a god at primal rages, and you're going to get so much impact on them in your games. Now, the one counter tip that I got for you up against Winston is far too many people actually run away from Monkey when the Monkey is the one that jumped up in the first place, but no one punishes him. An overeager Monkey that jumps into 3 people with focus fire, even if that Monkey counters you 3, y'all can destroy him. Like, imagine if a monkey jumped on a Zen, an Ana, and a Genji, right? If you discord, nade, and right-click dash, that monkey is deleted. So sometimes the call needs to be stand your ground, kill the monkey, or it needs to be let's get away, let's back up, and let's try to stay alive. Now moving on to the next character that is going to help you dominate the support meta is none other than Lucio. Now the most important thing you need to understand about Lucio is the duality of Lucio, and this is going to be pretty similar to the duality of Genji that we talked about on this channel, and has been a concept as long as Overwatch has been a thing. Now the duality of Lucio is there's an aggressive side of Lucio and a passive side, and both styles can work in ranked, but a combination of the two could be the way to have the most impact if you switch back and forth depending on the situation. You see, if you're a mechanically competent Lucio's, you can duel so many different things and contest things that you have just no business doing, but you could do it anyways. Like, you could straight up duel a Widowmaker. You could straight up ruin a monkey's dive. You could do so many different things as an aggressive base Lucio. Go get picks, go contest people. It is incredibly powerful. Now, there's the passive Lucio that is mainly peeling, where you taxi your team around, bail out your Ana when she's getting dove, and sometimes you need to incorporate that strategy, especially if your secondary support is getting harassed over and over again. You need to identify which side will get the most impact, not just in every game, but in every individual moment, and be ready to pivot moment to moment, whether it's going in aggressively or playing more passive. This is the way to master Lucio like a grandmaster. Now, on top of that, in this current meta, the best thing that you should be doing when you are playing the de facto Zarya monkey composition is making sure that you enable your Zarya to go in and out of combat. You see, unlike with the Rhine composition, Monkey Zarya leaves the Zarya kind of in an isolated territory, but a Lucio can help her get back to natural cover that much quicker and get more value out of her bubbles and out of her energy. This is incredibly important, and that's why, as a Lucio player, you should be thinking about your Zarya more than just about anyone else in this meta, because enabling her can be an easy route to victory if your Zarya is any good. Now, the one counter tip that I have for you to use up against a Lucio is when you are activating an ultimate, like a Nano Blade or something like that. If you have CC, you're someone like Brig, you're someone like Roadhog, you're someone like McCree, or even like Sombra with a hack, if you wait around where that Lucio is, position yourself in a place to where you can actually cancel his ultimate, and Lucio often won't look around to make sure he's safe. They will respond instantly to the Nano Blade with their beat, and if you are waiting for it, you're positioned for it, you can shut that down and allow your Genji to pop off and get like the 6k or whatever the case may be. Now moving on to the next tank on our list that is going to help you dominate Season 24 is none other than Zarya. We just mentioned her. Now, a lot of you know how to play Zarya with Reinhardt, but playing Zarya with Monkey is a whole new thing that does demand a complete change in your general playstyle. The first thing that you need to understand is you need to use natural cover as a baseline and use your cooldowns to venture out and get value done, and then go right back to natural cover. You never want to be caught in no man's land in the middle of the open with no main tank to protect you because there's no Rein and no bubbles. You're just gonna get killed like really easily, so you got to keep that in mind. Another thing about Zarya is, especially in a dive, when enemies are playing dive characters or there's not like a dedicated Reinhardt or like a frame for the enemy team, you can be grabbing really aggressively. You don't necessarily need to be getting like a 4 or 5 man grab. Just getting a 1 or 2 man grab to start off the fight before anyone on your team dies can easily snowball that, because you're gonna get a lot of charge from that. They're gonna get grabbed, they're gonna fire back at you, you're gonna bubble, you're gonna get full energy, you're gonna be able to roll through the rest of the team, because once you have that numbers advantage, your monkey can jump in, you can bubble him, and it's a lot harder for them to shut him down with less people, and it just snowballs really easily. That could be a way that you win a fight right off the bat. Don't just like be waiting for that perfect opportunity all the while your teammates are getting picked off. Then you finally grab 3 people, but you don't have enough follow-up, and it's just a mess. So definitely keep that in mind. Grab early. Now, as a mechanical tip, you got to make sure that you're grinding your tracking. Zarya is a very mechanically demanding hero, and if you don't put any effort into grinding your mechanical skill, you're just not going to be able to max out on her DPS. And then as an additional tip, you can right-click an enemy on the ground and then look up and melee for a giant amount of burst damage, especially when you have huge amounts of HP. It can be a great way to finish off someone or one-shot someone like a Tracer. Now, the number one counter that I'll tell you when going up against the Zarya is, you know, sometimes people say, hey, don't shoot shoot the bubble, don't shoot the bubble, which is legitimate advice, but you don't always want every bubble to be a immortality, right? Bubble protects you from damage and gives you energy, but it isn't a Mario superstar. It's not going to make you invulnerable. So if a Zarya is running away at like 50 HP, break her damn bubble and kill her. You don't need to just non-shoot the bubble. So sometimes it's appropriate, especially if you have focus fire, to just break that bubble right away and kill that Zarya, especially because she thinks she's safe running at you with her bubble, and if you just break it right away and focus her down, she's gonna die out of nowhere. But you gotta coordinate this with at least one other person. Now moving on to the next character on the list that is gonna help you dominate season 24 is Mercy. Now, you need to understand how to balance healing and damage boosting on Mercy. You realistically want a damage boost as much as you possibly can and not get punished for it. Yes, there are going to be times that you need to heal, but in between that, damage boosting is just going to give you the most offensive result, and it can really change some breaking points in that you get a pick damage boosting the right targets at the right times, and if you're just healing all the time, you're not going to tap into that value, and that's the real way to carry on Mercy. So realistically, damage boost as much as you possibly can, especially when you're talking about characters like Pharah and Ashe. It usually is worth pocketing them and damage boosting them far more than just healing a little bit here or there, especially if you have another healer like an Ana that can keep your tank sustained. Now, a big mistake that a lot of Mercy players make is they will often lose like 1 or 2 people, and then they'll pop their ults and they'll try to get a res off and try to turn a fight. This can work, but it's incredibly risky, and a much more reliable way to use Mercy ult is actually to use it aggressively either before a fight even starts or right after you actually get a pick to snowball a fight. Think of Orisa's ultimate like a supercharger, right? And with Orisa being out of the meta, that's the best that we got, and it's an incredibly powerful ultimate to give your team mass damage boost. It can put so much pressure on the enemy team in advance and basically make them lose all their shields, take extra damage, waste abilities like nade and different heals like amp up, and that can be a way that you just kind of overwhelm them. But this doesn't work if you've already lost a whole bunch of people, because that extra multiplier isn't going to multiply across your entire team, only the people that are remaining alive. Now, especially in this meta, you should be vocal about asking for res guards. If someone dies and you want to get that res because it's like a 4v5 and you want to make it a 5v5 again, then you can call for a monkey bubble or a Zarya bubble to help protect you during a res. And this is a really powerful thing that they do a lot at higher ranks, but it can be something that you can coordinate at lower ranks as long as you identify it and talk to your teammates. I know it's scary, but come on, just call and say, hey, I need a bubble, and yeah, that's as simple as it gets, and you can get a res off without actually fear of death. Now moving on to the counter. To counter Mercy's is just realize that her self-heal only starts after 1 second of not taking damage. So if you're a hit scan player, especially someone that just does a little bit of damage like a D.VA or someone like a soldier, you can just put a tiny bit of damage into her every second while she's flying, and it makes it a lot easier for the rest of your team to actually focus her down because she's not going to heal up as long as you're doing a little bit of damage to her in between 1 second intervals. Now moving on to the next tank on our list, we have none other than D.VA, who's finally pretty good now. So the first thing that you should be doing every single time a monkey jumps in at you is actually jet out, and you can boop a monkey and interrupt his jump or engage. This works really well, especially if you're on the high ground. Like, let's take Route 66 defense on the high ground of Garage. When a monkey jumps up there, you can actually boop him right off and just shut him down like that. You boop him and then you jet right back. Like, you can boop and 180 jet right back in this same motion and interrupt that jump, and he pretty much has no counterplay to that. It's a very strong thing that you could do on D.Va every single time, so I'd highly suggest it. Now, on top of that, when you're diving a target, you not only need to be thinking about DMing that target, but DMing away the heals of the target that's getting dope. You can often angle your DM to where it blocks heals from like a nearby Ana, and then it makes it a lot harder for them to get peeled out of that situation, and it's a lot more effective than just blocking off that person's damage, because they often can just keep getting healed up and it's really hard to burst them down. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, another thing about D.Va is you gotta save a little bit of your DM for really important cooldowns or important scenarios. Things like Dynamite are really easy to react to. Fire Strike, a lot of these abilities are really easy to react to as long as you have the DM to do so and you're just paying attention. On top of that, there are certain scenarios like an ally getting hooked by a Roadhog that you can directly stop as long as you have a little bit of DM in the tank. So definitely make sure that you always have a little bit. Sure, you could eat spam here or there so your team doesn't get spammed out, but you want to make sure that you leave a tiny sliver at least to eat these really important cooldowns or stop these important plays by the enemy. Now, as an additional tip for D.Va, make sure that when your DPS are contesting another DPS, go with them. It's so strong for your like Tracer or Genji to dive a DPS, and you go with them because you can DM the entry and make it so it's almost like a free kill when the enemy has no counterplay. They can't win that matchup. And especially when like someone like an Ashe is on the high ground getting pocketed by a Mercy, your DPS cannot win that matchup solo. You need to go with them. But honestly, if you and a DPS are going together, you can still win that matchup and actually kill the Ashe and then be able to punish the Mercy right afterwards and get a double kill just with a little bit of teamwork. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, as a counter to D.Va is bad divas, especially divas that don't utilize natural cover and don't have good ability resources, are basically ult batteries. Whether you're Tracer, whether you're Genji, whether you're Reaper, Sombra, I mean, you could just farm a bad diva over and over again. If you're Sombra, just hack her every single time. Tracer, play the high ground, just harass her over and over again and just build up this amazing ult charge that you just get to have so many more ultimates because this diva doesn't understand how to play around you. Now, moving on to the last character on the list that is going to let you dominate Season 24 is none other than Hammond. Now, Hammond is actually pretty good in this meta, but the first thing that you need to be doing on Hammond every single time, and the number one character you should swap to, is when an enemy has a Widowmaker. You see a Widowmaker, you follow a Widowmaker. You basically shut her down. You are the best counter to Widowmaker because she can't do anything to you. She needs peel. And if she has to play with her team instead of really far away, that makes it a lot easier for your team to make a play on her. It makes her positioning fundamentally weaker, so you gotta keep her in check. That's your most important thing first off. Now, if I'm being honest, we could talk about ways that you could like counter a Sombra, where you could fly up and midair, you could shoot her, or whatever the case may be. If I'm being honest with you, swap off. If they're playing a Sombra and she's good and she's paying attention to you, just swap off. It's as simple as that, really. That's the best advice I'm gonna give you. I could give you a lot of like nuanced things to play around her, but the easiest way is just to simply swap off. Now, up against specifically Rein Zarya compositions, especially with McCree being so bad right now, there's not gonna be a ton of CC. If the enemy's not playing a Sombra, they're playing something like Reaper, Ashe, or something like that, just roll through their team over and over again as Hammond. If they can't stop you, you just keep rolling through the Rein Zarya over and over and over again, just harassing them. Your team will see opportunity in that because you're going to be creating a lot of space, and then eventually you're going to get your ultimate and you're going to be able to make a big play as long as you don't get caught out and killed. But if the enemy has like only one sleep dart, you should realistically never get killed. As long as you're engaging with sizable bubbles, making sure that you go through the enemy quick enough, you should be just fine, and you should have a lot of impact on Hammond. Now, the number one counter to Hammond, the number one thing that you got to realize is when a Hammond is killable or not. Sometimes a Hammond has like 1,000 health, right? And if you just or like two of you are just focusing him down, you're not going to kill him. But all the while, there's other enemies that you could be focusing on, but you're just trying to kill this Hammond that is impossible to kill. Now, when a Hammond is 200 HP, that is when you call focus the Hammond, focus the Hammond. And it's really important that you identify when a Hammond is possible to be killed and when a Hammond is not. Don't even try if he's not. It's just a waste of time. But if he is, then you all need to try to focus him, call for it, and try to focus him together. Now, the GameLeap website is the best place to go if you want to see in-depth VODs of Grandmaster players or pro breakdowns of every single character on this list. So do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below, and I can't wait to see you there. But that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for coming by. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.